Imagine you are a 65 or so year old man with polio in a wheelchair in the 1950s, and you are a therapist. People come to talk to you about their problems, and hopefully through a conversation with you, you can help them solve their problems. And imagine that your first customer of the day is an elementary school kid, and he's being told to go to see this 65-year-old dude in a wheelchair with polio in the 1950s because the little kid has a problem and the parents don't know how to solve this problem. So this kid is going against his will to talk to this guy in a wheelchair about his problem, which is that every night this kid pees his bed. So the question is, imagine you being the 65-year-old guy with polio in a wheelchair. How long would it take to create a feeling of comfort with this kid? How long would that take? How difficult would it be? How easy would it be? Maybe 10 minutes? 20 minutes? This old guy with polio in the wheelchair created an instant connection with this kid with 12 words. And this guy in the wheelchair is the guy who invented conversational hypnosis. And this speech is about Milton Erickson, super genius. Milton Erickson has a character arc similar to Walter White from the TV show Breaking Bad. Has everyone seen Breaking Bad? Are you familiar with Breaking Bad? In Breaking Bad, there's a character who's a chemistry teacher, and he gets cancer. And when he starts out, he's kind of a not too assertive, not too confident kind of guy, but he gets cancer and he has to pay for his cancer treatment. And he decides to use his chemistry brain to make and sell drugs. And it turns out that he is a super genius when it comes to making drugs, because he makes the best drugs around. And the reason it's called Breaking Bad is because that's a metaphor for becoming more and more of an evil person. And the show went on for 5 seasons. And if you study the character arc carefully, in every season, Walter White was expecting to die. Not in a car crash, oh my God, I'm going to die, but then you don't die. More of a couple of days, I'm going to die. I have time to think about that I'm going to die. And he accepts that he's going to die. He accepts that, well, I'm a criminal, I guess this is what happens, I'm going to die. But then he doesn't die. And every time after he accepts his death and he doesn't die, he becomes a much more evil, vicious super villain. And that's his character arc over the 5 seasons. Worse and worse and worse. Bad and bad and bad. And that's what happened to young Milton Erickson. When he was a child, he had polio. And he heard the doctor talking to his mom. And the doctor said, I'm afraid your son's not going to make it. In fact, I don't think he has more than a few days left. Young Milton heard this. And he thought, I guess that's it. But he didn't die. According to many psychologists who study this, some people, when they think they're going to die and they fully accept their death, psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, and then they don't die, something changes about them. From an evolutionary, instinctive perspective, all of our normal fears are programmed into us to keep us from things that might kill us. But if you accept your death, you're okay with your death, and you don't die, some of these fears just vanish. And many of these fears are social fears. Fears of public speaking, fears of talking to strangers, fears of starting conversations with interesting strangers. So when Milton's fear of death vanished and all of these social fears also vanished, he started to experiment with how he could talk to people. He would just roll up in his wheelchair to strangers and just start saying strange things just to see how they would respond. He was like a little scientist. Eventually he became a medical doctor and a hypnotist so he could help people solve their problems, so he could help people overcome their fears. And when he was beginning his career, he would try all of these crazy outside-the-box things to see if he could help people. He wasn't worried about getting in trouble. He was not worried about breaking the rules. He was not worried about other doctors going, you shouldn't be doing that. That's not the proper way to do things. And luckily, for people like me that like to study that kind of thing, he wrote down a lot of his cases, all of his techniques. And one of my favorites was this guy that came to see him. Doc, I got this horrible problem. I just got a job on the 30th floor of this building, but I can't stand the elevator. As soon as I get into the elevator, I can't do it, Doc. What do I do? I can walk up the stairs, but I'm sweaty and I'm smelly, or I could just force my way on the elevator and I might die before I get to my office. What do I do, Doc? So Milton Erickson says, don't worry, I got you. We'll fix this. I guarantee it. Meet me at the elevator tomorrow. We'll muscle our way in. We'll come back to the office and talk about it. The next day, we'll muscle our way into the elevator. Then we'll come back to the office and talk about it. The next day, we'll muscle our way into the elevator. Then we'll come back and talk about it. And I guarantee you that after a week maximum, your elevator fears will be gone. So the guy says, all right, I'll try it. So the first day, they get to the elevator. Milton Erickson in his wheelchair, elevator man, elevator doors open, and in the elevator is an elevator girl, a very young, very attractive, very seductive elevator girl. And the elevator girl looks at the elevator man and says, I want to kiss you. Elevator man freaks the F out. Milton says, don't worry about her, just forget about her. Next day, same thing. Elevator doors open. Elevator man gets in, sees the elevator girl staring right at him. I want to kiss you. Man freaks out again. He's about to lose his you-know-what. Third day, same thing. Fourth day, same thing. By the fifth day, this guy is a nervous wreck. He's about to take the stairs and then jump out the window just to end it all. So the fifth day, he's just shaking and sweating and hits the open door button. The doors open up and the elevator's empty. So he walks into the elevator feeling a huge sense of relief that the elevator girl is gone. So this elevator Mr. Miyagi strategy, if you remember Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off, wax on. This is so boring. Wax off, wax on, wax on. Then you get a fight. What? How did I learn how to do that? So he tricked this guy into feeling comfortable at an empty elevator. He took his fear of the elevator, he attached it to the girl, so when the girl was gone, his fear was gone. Later in his career, he learned how to do that only through storytelling. Instead of having to go out and have experiences, he just told stories about these experiences. And he would, within these stories, take away fears from this part of their life and get rid of it. Take resource states like confidence and take them away from here and stick them over here. And the general experience of Milton Erickson's customers would be that they would come in, they would say, hey, Doc, I got this problem. Can you help me? And Milton Erickson would say, oh, that reminds me of a story. And he would start telling stories for like an hour. These stories that were just super confusing. So confusing that you would just forget this after an hour or so. So the patients would leave an hour later thinking, what did that guy just talk about? I don't remember anything that happened. But then they would realize a week or two later, their problems were gone. And so the bedwetting kid comes in. Erickson looks at him. Remember 12 words. He looks at the kid's information. The kid is younger. He's got an older brother. Older brother plays football. Younger brother plays baseball. Erickson looks at him. You play baseball? Uh-huh. Older brother plays football? Uh-huh. Yeah, football is a dumb sport. Right off the bat, kid. Oh, yeah, you totally. Football, you don't need to be smart. You just crash into each other. It doesn't matter what happens. Just But baseball players, they got to be smart. Are you smart? Yeah, I'm totally smart. Because baseball players, when you catch the ball, you have to squeeze at the right time. Metaphorically talking about not peeing his bed and peeing in the toilet. When you throw the baseball, it's very, very important that you release at the right time. Can you do that? Yeah, I can do that. And when you throw the baseball, it's important that you hit your target. You can hit your target, right? Yeah, I can hit your target. I can hit the target. Do you like ice cream? Yeah, I like ice cream. So Erickson starts talking about this ice cream factory. All these vats filled with different ice cream raw materials that have to flow through all these tubes that have all these valves that open and close at the right time so the ice cream goes in the right place at the right time. All of these, of course, are metaphors for peeing in the toilet and not peeing in your bed. So this kid shows up. For all he knows, he talked about baseball and an ice cream factory. And after that conversation with Milton Erickson, super genius, that kid never wet the bed again. And that is how Milton Erickson learned to solve people's problems without ever having to talk about people's problems.